You're not going to write down on a piece of paper, this is my cycle, gram steroids, 4 units of growth hormone, and I want to use 15 IUs of rapid-acting insulin post-workout, so I need 150 grams of carbohydrates post-workout. No, stop. Stop it right there. This is not how we do it. Vigorous Steve here. Let's talk about combining growth hormone with insulin. Does that really provide a lot of synergy? And is that really a game changer like so many people say it is? Well, I certainly think so. My physique started to improve substantially better while combining growth hormone with insulin. But you might have heard from some IFBB pros that it didn't do anything for their physique. So personally, I think that they're lying, or they have phenomenal genetics and they already produce a ton of growth hormone and a decent amount of insulin for nutrient partitioning by themselves, or they're simply on the next best thing, which is Increlex. That's pharmaceutical IGF-1, which combines the traits of growth hormone with insulin. But for most of us, pharmaceutical Increlex seems to be unobtainable. And if you even can find it, it seems to be unaffordable. 2 milligrams of Increlex goes for $750 if it's not more nowadays, due to this beautiful inflation that is going out all over the world. So for everybody else that doesn't have phenomenal genetics, doesn't have phenomenal response to drugs, but would still like to build a decent physique, growth hormone and insulin is going to be a game changer. Let me explain to you guys why. First things first, please like the video, leave a comment for the algorithm, and consider joining the Vigorous crew by subscribing. Now, again, it's a step-by-step process. First, we have to reach our natural potential, or at least train for a couple of years to get the fundamentals of training intensity and the nutrition down. Then you might start with a ACG protocol to assess your testicular function, transition into the use of anabolic androgenic steroids. And once you have a fundamental grasp on how your body responds to testosterone and perhaps some other steroids on top, you know how to interpret your blood work, you know how to see which markers are affected, how your lipids are skewing, and more importantly, how to manage your overall health with the use of ancillaries and health supplements, and making the appropriate changes to your diet and your lifestyle. Once you've got all of that under control, the next logical step would be to grow on growth hormone. Not continuously increase the dose of steroids, because it's ultimately the steroids that are going to wreck your health way more than all of the other performance-enhancing drugs that we can choose from. So a combination of steroids with growth hormone and insulin is preferred. This way, you can keep the dose of steroids moderate, let's say 500 milligrams up to 1,000 milligrams, assuming this is during the off-season where you're eating a decent amount of food, which then the insulin and the growth hormone will help you partition into skeletal muscle. If the dose of steroids remains moderate, same for the growth hormone dose and same for the insulin dose, then you can maintain your health much better than megadosing one of these vectors. Again, anabolic processes comes through many different pathways. We can stimulate anabolism through the androgen receptor and simultaneously inhibiting the glucocorticoid receptor, perhaps get additional anabolism through the sexual binding globulin receptor complex, which is hard to maintain on cycle, but there are several ways around that. We have, of course, the growth hormone receptor pathway. Insulin can interact with the IGF-1 receptor. Coincidentally, IGF-1 can interact with the insulin receptor at similar binding affinities. How much of an overlap you're going to get, that remains to be seen, because again, insulin is going to fluctuate throughout the day unless you're using a long-acting insulin. And IGF-1, unless you're supplementing with that, whether that's IGF-1 LR3, IGF-1 DES, or again, pharmaceutical Increlex or Iplex, if you can afford and find it, most of the IGF-1 that we're going to get is going to come from the growth hormone that we take. When you take growth hormone, this ultimately produces IGF-1 in the liver. But liver health is very important for maximal IGF-1 output. And also, there are several cofactors which contribute to maximum IGF-1 output, one of them being estradiol. So if you go on cycle, you need to make sure that you use a testosterone base, perhaps ACG, DHEA, and pregnenolone for normal and adequate sex hormone and neurosteroid balance. Again, I made a detailed ebook about that. You can find it on my website. It's called Off-Season Cycles with Bioidentical Hormones, where I discuss in detail how to manipulate the neurosteroids the sex hormones and combine that with growth hormone and insulin to a certain extent. And if you would like to know more about insulin, or growth hormone for that matter, I got 2 separate dedicated ebooks really explaining the nitty-gritty about growth hormone use, IGF-1 use for that matter, and insulin usage. So in this video, I just want to cover the basics. If you have your steroid cycle mapped out, there's absolutely no reason to increase the dose beyond 1,000 milligrams for most individuals if you combine that with growth hormone and insulin. Now, I found from my personal experience, there's no scientific literature to support this. This is just purely from my personal experience coaching, well, a ton of people over the last decade. I found that the optimal synergy between your steroid intake and your growth hormone intake falls right around a weekly intake of 250 milligrams anabolic androgenic steroids combined. So whether that's just test by itself or a combination of test, primo, and mastrone or trembolone, for example, or nandrolone, whatever you prefer to take, 250 milligrams per week would get optimal synergy for 1 IU growth hormone per day. And the reason why I do a weekly dose to a daily dose is because most of us, when we talk about our steroid intake, that's a weekly intake because not everybody does daily microadministrations. So if you say, bro, what cycle are you on? 1,000 milligrams of a test per week. Right? But a growth hormone dose would be explained in a daily dose of 1, 2, 3, 6, 10 IUs per day. 250 milligrams steroids per week would require or utilize 1 IU of growth hormone per day. So if you're on a steroid dose of 1,000 milligrams per week, I would advise people to take around 4 IUs of growth hormone per day. That seems to give the best synergy. That seems to be the most manageable regarding the side effects. Keep in mind that the more steroids you take, the more blood pressure increases, the more water retention. And of course, it highly depends on which steroid you take, on the amount of water retention that you're going to undergo. So if you do 1,000 milligrams of nandrolone, or let's say 250 milligrams test, 500 milligrams nandrolone, and then 50 milligrams anadrol 5 times per week, that's about 1,000, you're going to retain a substantially higher amount of water compared to an equal dose of 330 milligrams of test, 330 milligrams of primo, and 330 milligrams of mastrone, right? That's supposedly drier gains, less water retentive compared to a combination of test, nandrolone, and anadrol, for example. So keep that in mind. Still, the synergy is there, 250 milligrams per week to 1 IU per day. You can start there. Now, I would not recommend you to start if you're on 2,000 milligrams of steroids to immediately go to 8 IUs of growth hormone. It should be done in increments. So please, guys, please don't do that. Just lower the dose of steroids to TRT or generous TRT for bodybuilders to sustain the muscle mass. 250 milligrams testosterone enanthator cypionate per week, biweekly administrations. Then you introduce the growth hormone at 1 IU, give that 2 weeks, maybe bump it up to 2 IUs to see how you manage the water retention, how you manage the lethargy, and how you manage this acute insulin resistance, which you might get following a growth hormone administration. Build your way up slowly over time. I don't see a reason why you wouldn't want to take more than 2 IUs of growth hormone on a dose of 250 milligrams steroids per week. Now, if you were to take 500 milligrams, maybe 2-3 IUs, 750 milligrams, 3-4 IUs, 1,000 milligrams, 4-5 IUs, etc. But to be fair, most bodybuilders would kind of max out or tap out at 1,000 milligrams of anabolic androgenic steroids per week and 4 to 5 units of growth hormone per day. When you add insulin in this picture, the Triforce or the golden triangle is complete. You might even have to lower the dose of steroids because now you get additional synergy from the nutrient partitioning that the insulin provides, allowing you to reduce the dose of steroids even further. So maybe you have to take half the dose. Instead of 1,000 milligrams of steroids per week, now you take 500, preventing you from taking this 4 or 5 units of growth hormone. You can reduce the dose of growth hormone yet again to 2 or 3 units, because now you have insulin in the picture to facilitate this nutrient partitioning, which the steroids and the growth hormone is going to utilize for hypertrophy and hyperplasia. And now you're optimizing everything from every angle possible. I have clients who run 500 milligrams of steroids per week, 2-3 units of growth hormone, perhaps 10, 25 IUs of long-acting insulin, and some fast-acting insulin around the workouts, and their blood work is close to perfect. Is it absolutely perfect like a drug-free athlete? Of course not. Liver enzymes are still going to be elevated. Creatinine is going to be towards the top of the reference range. Lipids are going to be slightly skewed. But for this 110 kilos or 250, 260 pounds that they carry, their blood work is looking a lot better than megadosing the steroids or taking a higher dose of steroids and just growth hormone on top. So if you combine all three, and again, you learn how to manipulate your diet accordingly and your lifestyle choices around your bodybuilding journey, you can maintain your blood pressure, your blood work, your overall organ health much better than just ramping up the dose in one vector of megadosing steroids because you can't afford the growth hormone, when in reality, you should cut back the costs of your steroid intake, spend a little bit of that money on growth hormone, and whatever else you have left, if you follow the lifestyle and you're going balls deep into this bodybuilding journey, add in the insulin. 5 units, 10 units, up to 1 IU per 20 grams of carbohydrates that you eat over the day. And again, the harder you train, the more carbohydrates you eat, the more insulin you could potentially take. Now, I'm not advising you to take more insulin. You have to match your insulin intake to your nutrition. We're not going to match our nutrition to our insulin intake. You're not going to write down on a piece of paper, this is my cycle, gram steroids, 4 units of growth hormone, and I want to use 15 IUs of rapid acting insulin post-workout. So I need 150 grams of carbohydrates post-workout. No, stop it right there. This is not how we do it. We have our food intake. We match our steroid intake to our training intensity. We match our growth hormone intake to our steroid intake. And we match our insulin intake to the nutrition, which is already working for us. So if you're eating 500 grams of carbohydrates over the day and you weigh, let's say, 110 kilos, I would use a long-acting insulin dose between 11 units, so that's 1 unit per 10 kilo of body weight, up until 25 units of Lantus for this 500 grams of carbohydrates that you're eating. From my experience and all of my clients' experience, this will not make you go hypo. Not around the workout, not upon waking, not between meals. 1 IU per 20 grams of carbohydrates. And this even allows you to take a little bit of rapid acting insulin around the workout, whether that's pre-workout or post-workout or both, if you're highly experienced, only when you're highly experienced. So this is a couple of years down the line. Those dosages are going to be 1 IU per 20 grams of carbohydrates because you're now double dipping. You took 1 IU per 20 grams of carbs over the day in the form of long-acting insulin upon waking. And then again, you're double dipping with a rapid-acting insulin or short-acting insulin around the workout, 1 gram per 20 grams of carbs, because the insulin is still active that you took in the morning, and now you're double dipping this fast-acting insulin or rapid-acting insulin post-workout or pre-workout or both. There's a lot of moderation that needs to be in place. It's a step-by-step process, but once you master all of this, you can get away. You can build a phenomenal physique with 500 milligrams of steroids, 2-3 units of growth hormone, and, let's say 5 to 25 units of Lantus. Don't start there. Don't be stupid. You build your way up to this protocol. You're going to have eBooks describing how to do this safely and responsibly, and make sure you buy all of those health monitoring devices that you're going to need to manage your blood pressure and manage your blood glucose levels, and make sure you do your blood work with Merrick Health or Bria Labs, wherever else you can monitor your blood work frequently, because that's ultimately what you're going to need to do if you're going down this path of optimizing every vector possible for the most amount of anabolism while keeping your blood work intact. And then you will see. You can see it by yourself. Your blood work will be better on a protocol like this, a moderate protocol of steroids, growth hormone plus insulin, than just megadosing the growth hormone or the SARMs or all these experimental peptides, which you really have to do quite high dosages of because they're not as effective as growth hormone or insulin or the combination thereof. If you're going to go with growth hormone secretagogues, the prolactin increases or the cortisol increases are going to offset your libido, which you supposedly should get from your steroid intake. And it's going to offset the anabolism that you're going to get, that you should be getting from your steroid intake, right? The cortisol and the prolactin are kind of counterproductive. You get more growth hormone, you get more IGF-1 downstream, but the anabolism of your steroid cycle is a little bit lost in this sense. So why not just go with the growth hormone, the pharmaceutical growth hormone, right? The one that is used in medical settings. Is it more expensive? Of course. But you'll get more bang for your buck of 2-3 units of pharmaceutical than 10 IUs of generic from China, which who knows what the quality is. You can send it in for testing, spend additional money. I don't believe in this at-home testing equipment because it would just say if it's growth hormone or not. You want to know the purity. You can do a subcutaneous administration, an intramuscular administration, an IV administration. I'll link it at the end of this one. How to check for your growth hormone parameters while doing blood work. Right? There's always a way to test the purity of your growth hormone. Still, if you're going to go on a steroid cycle, pharma steroids, pharma growth hormone, pharma insulin, which I don't think there's generic insulin or underground lab insulin available anywhere, but feel free to prove me wrong in the comment section. Pharma everything, pharma ancillaries, the best quality health supplements you can find, the best lab panel you can find, link down below at Merrick Health if you're in the States. And otherwise come to Bria Labs over here in Thailand. They got all the markers that you need very, very cheap and results the next day. You'll look good in a couple of years of doing this if you're on top of your health. All right, I'll leave it here. This combination has my seal of approval. I've done it for many years. I've done it with all of my clients or the majority of my clients. Steroids first, growth hormone later, insulin, maybe take the growth hormone out for a certain period of time to see how they respond to insulin, reintroduce the growth hormone. One happy customer with beautiful blood work. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find everything that I'm associated with down below in the YouTube description section. Vigorous crew, you guys know what to do. A front double bicep for you guys. Unfortunately, there's no growth hormone in these cannons, but again, I dabbled with pharmaceutical growth hormone for many, many years. And I think all of the hyperplasia and the hypertrophy that it caused is still present. So now I just need to sustain on a little bit of steroids and a little bit of insulin. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.